Welcome, everyone. We'll start this webinar shortly as more attendees arrive. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're connecting from. I hope everybody is doing good and keeping safe. Thanks for your taking time and making yourself available to attend this webinar today. To introduce myself, I'm Shashidhar, and I'm part of Citrix Ready technical team. I would like to welcome you all to this Citrix Ready technical webinar series, where we showcase how Citrix and our partners have integrated to deliver valuable products and solutions to the common problems faced by our customers today. So today we'll talk about what's newly cooking at ControlUp and Citrix. And we have Trent Tai, Senior Technical Specialist from ControlUp, along with us, who will tell us the recipe of it. Thanks, Trent, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. So before we jump on to know the main recipe of this, I would like to let you know that Citrix Ready, which is a end-to-end technology partner program. Sorry, Trent, if you could just move to the next slide. Thanks. Yeah, so Citrix Ready is an end-to-end technology partner program which showcases and recommends third-party products, solutions, and services to demonstrate compatibility with Citrix products. Citrix or our partners, joint customers can quickly and easily find solutions recommended by Citrix in the Citrix Ready marketplace by navigating to citrixready.citrix.com. For those who want to know more information about the Citrix Ready program, you could navigate to citrix.com/partnerprograms/Citrix Ready. Next slide, please. Yeah, so nowadays everyone talks about cloud, remote working, security, isn't it? So Citrix has already evolved a lot in these recent years, and we have moved on to the cloud, and our entire workspace service portfolio is available in the form of Citrix Cloud services. So these cloud services, which are readily available to consume, in most cases, all you need to do is subscribe and activate them. So the benefit to you is that the core infrastructure that you would typically have to install, manage, maintain, and upgrade yourself, it's all now managed for you as a service. Now, most companies are already on Citrix Cloud journey, and they need a better way to provide their users with access to the apps, data, and services they need, and a better way to for the IT guys to provision, manage, and secure all of it. Now, our cloud transformation isn't just about making our independent products available as cloud services, but also we are unifying our products into an integrated portfolio of services more holistically that addresses the needs of today's hybrid and multi-cloud IT environments. So what it means for you is it's a better way to provide any service to any user in a simple, fast, secure, and adaptable way. Next slide, please. Yep, Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops, whether it's an on-prem version or whether it's a Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop service on Citrix Cloud, this is the central component of the Citrix workspace. So at its very core, if you think about centralizing your apps and desktops and then providing secure remote access from any device, this is the way to go. So this enables you to embrace BYOD as well, which is having a lot of demand these days, and at a very low cost endpoints, empowering your employees to work from anywhere. And more importantly, it eliminates your IT headache for PC management, patching, and other data center headaches. So please explore our Citrix Cloud services and get a feel of how easy it is used to these by navigating to citrix.cloud.com. So before I hand it over to Trent, I request him to share the main recipe. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the question panel on the right-hand side, and we will take your questions in the Q&A session at the end. And we are also recording this webinar, which will be posted on Citrix Ready YouTube channel later, once we have this webinar concluded. So without any further delay, please welcome Trent from ControlUp. The mic is all yours, Frank.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm going to start with just an overview as to who ControlUp is for anyone who maybe hasn't heard of us before or is just hearing about us for the first time. So we're a venture-backed company. We've got self-sustaining business growth over the last few years. Actually, I think since the inception of the company, we've got over 1,000 plus customers now. And obviously, we're a VMware, Citrix, Nutanix, Microsoft WVD partner. We've got all those credentials as well. So that's also part of why we're here for the Citrix Ready webinar. So speaking about how ControlUp operates, this is our architecture. So we actually run the ControlUp console that you see on the left side. That's the real-time console you run on your premise. And it generates all the live statistics by connecting into all your different resources. So we connect into your Citrix XenApp servers, your Citrix VDI servers. We connect in through API into the brokers themselves, so we can pull broker-specific data there. And then we can also connect into your hypervisors, whether it's Citrix Hypervisor, VMware Hyper-V, or so on and so forth. All of that gets monitored by our ControlUp Monitor cluster that you can actually break out into your geolocational parts, so that way you can monitor all those resources locally. The information is, the historical information is uploaded to our cloud, where we have our ControlUp Insights product, which we'll go over as well. So what we do, so we do real-time monitoring of your data. We do remediation of things that you find within your environment. We have global benchmarks and analytics for our ControlUp Insights. That is the aggregate of all the community that we have that are uploading data into Insights. You can compare how you're doing versus the community. And then we got quick analysis. Our ControlUp product color codes everything in red and green and yellow, so that way you can see if things are good, bad, or maybe in some level of distress. We actively engage with our community to improve our product. Our product is almost infinitely extensible through script actions, and we'll go into some of those in a second. We've got an incredibly powerful automation platform where you can look at the way that things change within your environment and then actually proactively make actions to resolve those issues. And then more important in today's world, as people are trying to add on people who are working from home and you're increasing your capacity and you want to make sure that your performance is good, we do offer some excellent tools to help with your capacity planning. So let's get right into the live demo. So this is the obviously the exciting part of what we can do at ControlUp. So we're going to start with just some real-time troubleshooting, show you how ControlUp can help identify problems in your environment and then resolve them. We'll get into monitoring and optimizing, where we can take a look at how ControlUp can actually help your user experience. And then we can get into the ControlUp automation engine, where we can actually see how ControlUp's automation can help solve those problems. So I'm in my ControlUp product right now and in the ControlUp real-time console. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch to the host view here. And we're looking at our hypervisors that we have within our environment. And we can see we've got Nutanix, Hyper-V, VMware, and Citrix Zen server as well. And what we can see is we've got, green is good, red is bad, yellow is some mix in between. We can look at our stress levels telling us that there's one machine, one host that's having a particular problem here, and he's under a high level of stress. And when we click on these little 3 dots, it tells us why that is. And for him, it's consume memory and data store rewrite IOPS. So for him, I actually know that consume memory is a normal state for him to be really high, but this data store issue is unusual. So what I'm going to do is, if I click on this little hamburger icon here, this is our virtual expert feature. And so our virtual expert is going to suggest ways that you can troubleshoot this issue. So he's suggesting we can navigate to some different views within ControlUp to actually explore what this issue is doing. So if I click on the machines view, it's going to drill now into the hypervisor, and it's going to show us all the virtual machines underneath it. From here, we can see that it's telling us what we're investigating. We're investigating this high output in the data store rewrite IOPS column on the host. It's highlighted that column for us, and it's sorted the machines view of that hypervisor, and it's again highlighted the column that it thinks is the one that's causing our particular issue. So for us, we can see we've got this one virtual machine here, Tools 2012 VM, and he's the one that seems to be having some health issues. So what I can do at this stage is if I right click on this virtual machine, I can actually execute a series of actions. And so ControlUp doesn't just do monitoring, we can also do remediation, we can also do management. And so what we're looking at here is a series of actions that we can use to see if we can remediate this issue. So, we can manage the file system of the machine itself, programs, updates, registry, services. We can refresh group policy. If we think maybe rebooting the machine will solve the issue, we can just reboot the machine straight from here. We can do it through the hypervisor itself as opposed to just through native Windows API calls. We can send messages to the users or execute a script action. But what I'm going to do, since I don't know what the actual root cause of the problem is yet, I want to investigate further. So I'm going to click on the virtual expert icon again, and it's going to suggest we go down into the next level. So I go to the sessions view now, and now this is an agent-based view. This is actually drilling into the virtual machine and showing us all of the sessions of this RDS server or of this Citrix server. And so we can see we've got one particular user here. It looks like he's running a program called IOmeter, and its IOPS again is about 20,000. And again, the column is highlighted, making it very simple and very easy to identify what we're looking for. So I'm not quite sure what this user is doing. So again, I can right click on this user object, and our context menu will actually change dependent on the object you're clicking on. So the machines view had a different list of actions as opposed to this user view where we now have a different set of actions that are context aware. So it's only showing you the relevant actions for the object that you're selecting. So for this one, we can kill group policy, refresh group policy. We can start a process in a session. We can import a registry into them. We can log them off, disconnect, or maybe send them a message, or again, execute a script action. But again, still, I'm not quite sure what the user's doing. I'm not quite sure what the actual root cause of this is yet. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to drill down into the processes view now. And you can see these metrics are updating every 3 seconds. And that, again, speaks to the real-time nature of the ControlUp product. So the data that you're seeing right now is live. This isn't something that happened 5 minutes ago. This isn't something that is an anomaly that is just going to go away and just happened to be at the time that the actual value was read. This is right now. So we can say with a lot of confidence that this user is actually running this program, dynamo.exe, it's outputting this value, and we should do something about it. So now that I'm in the processes view, again, we can right click on this process, and now we've got a different contextual menu with a different set of actions we can do. So for instance, we can kill the process and the process. We can set process affinity if we want it to run on maybe one CPU core as opposed to all. We can set process priority so we can reduce it, reduce the level of priority so that way it's not consuming as many resources, or it doesn't get that opportunity to over top of other processes. Or we can even throttle the process. So if we choose to throttle it down, we can specify a CPU limit where it will get capped at this particular amount of CPU that it's running at. But I still am not quite sure what dynamo.exe is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to get session screenshot. And you can see we offer 3 choices: without notifying the user, with user notification, and with user approval. All of these options, because obviously there's lots of people who have very sensitive environments, can be locked down. So we've got the security policy down here that you can enable or disable these features for different users of the ControlUp console. So I'm going to enable auto refresh here. So we're getting a screenshot now of this application. And this is important because, this process doing all these activities, we're not sure, maybe it's just in a loop, maybe it's stuck, in one of those it is not responding type situations. But we can see that the program is updating its UI, so we think it's operating correctly. So at this point, what I can do is I'm going to reach out to the user. Maybe I'll initiate a chat with him. If I go back to him, I can initiate a chat with him and actually start asking him, hey, what's going on? Why are you running IOmeter? Maybe that's something he just forgot to close. Maybe he was testing the storage, because now at this point we can see what it's doing. We can Google it. We can learn more information as opposed to what this is. And IOmeter is a tool used to test your underlying storage. So this might be an administrator who maybe had started IOmeter. He wanted to see the results, and then he just left it. Which would be unfortunate, but now we can actually take corrective action now that we understand the root of the problem. So we think this is a pretty exciting use case for ControlUp, and this is something that you can do within your environment. It works on the cloud and on premise, so that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to focus on Well, first, let's just go back to the slides real quick. All right, so that was performance monitoring. So now we're going to get into the monitoring and optimizing of ControlUp and what we can do to help improve the experience of your users, especially in shared environments or XenApp servers where you've got a lot of resource contention on one particular box. All right, so I'm just going to focus on PBS right now, and I'm going to go to my machines view, and I'm just going to RDP into this guy. All right, and what I can do, nope, sorry, not RDS. All right, so what we can do is if we actually go into what ControlUp can do to help optimize your resources is that if we have a session on these machines, so I have this particular user, let's do a quick who am I, so I'm Trent.adm. And there I am. So we can see that I'm consuming a bunch of resources on this machine. So if I'm looking at this, we can see I've got some process priorities normal, below normal, I'm consuming a bunch of memory. It's about 392 megabytes. So this is just users who are using your machine, and what happens is if they become active or if they idle, or if they get into a disconnected state, then you've got users who are on your Citrix servers who are consuming resources, but they're not actually being productive. You've got other users who are being productive, but those resources are being taken from them. So anyone with a normal priority or anyone who's just consuming memory, if they're idle or disconnected, they're not using those resources, but other users are losing their CPU cycles and they're losing the ability to page that memory into much faster RAM. So what we can do within ControlUp is we actually have the ability to monitor that and actually adjust process priorities and memory utilization based on the state of the actual user. So for this particular user, I'm going to switch him to one of these resources states that shouldn't be consuming much. So I'm going to disconnect this session, and we'll see his state go from active to disconnected. And ControlUp's going to pick up on that state change, and it's going to adjust the process priorities to, it's going to bring everything down to below normal, and then it's going to adjust the memory working set. It's going to trim out as much memory as possible to actually free up memory for other users. So now we can see it adjusted all the process priorities down to below normal. So now we're actually saving a lot of CPU cycles that could be being used by users who are being productive. And bang, we can see that the memory working set has now reduced down to 26 megabytes from 300. So now we freed up 300 megs for other users on this box. So, talking with customers today, they're being forced to onboard users onto servers where now they're oversubscribing those servers. And this is a way you can get back at least a little bit of those resources to try to improve your experience as much as possible. Whereas in the past, you might size your servers for your user load. Now you're just adding users on because you've got more work from home users or remote users who require these types of activities. So how does this work? So this is the ControlUp automation part. So there's two parts. There's the trigger and there's the script actions. So let's look at the trigger first. And so what we're doing is we're actually looking for these 4 triggers. These are community triggers that you can actually enable in your environment with ControlUp. When you download it, you hit this little checkbox and it'll ask you to download those 2 scripts to actually make these adjustments. So what we've done is we're looking at AAS session state disconnected. So this is what we did. We went from active to disconnected. So if I hit edit here, you can see that we've got this very simple trigger from active to a disconnected state. And we're looking at our scope, which is Acme, which is our folder structure here. So we're looking at our entire environment. And then we tell ControlUp to run these 2 actions. So when you want to add additional actions, you just click add, run an action. You get your list of actions. Anything that can be run is in black, and anything that can't or that needs to be enabled is in gray. And so we've enabled these 2 actions, just process priority based on session state and trim process working sets. So this one adjusts that process priority that you saw that reduces it from normal to below normal, and this one will trim the process working set down so that way you're reducing as much memory footprint of that user as possible. So we've got other ones as well, so we can go from a disconnected state to an active state, or we could go from active to an idle state or an idle to an active state. So what do these ones look like? So if I go like active to idle, this is what's called an advanced trigger. So we're focusing on the record type being session, and we're looking for the state is equal to active and the idle time in minutes is greater than or equal to 15 minutes. So that's what we consider an idle state. But if you want to adjust that value, you just click on the filter editor and you can just edit this value to whatever you want. So if you want it to be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you consider idle in your environment, that's what you can specify. So by default, it's 15 minutes. Once these two values evaluates to true, then we run these two scripts again. So we again trim the process memory working set and we adjust the process party based on session state. And so for the reverse, if we go from idle to active, again, a session record. And so now we've actually got an additional column. So we're looking at from this state. So if the idle time is greater than or equal to 15 minutes, we're going to this state. Is the state equal to active, and did the idle time change from greater than 15 minutes down to 0? So if that happens, we now run just a single script, because the way that when Windows memory management works, when you trim stuff out, you don't mark it, you don't remember it. So what happens is when those applications become active again, they will actually just page in the memory that they require to do whatever activity that they do. But for the process priority, we actually run an action again to adjust it based on that state. So if they're going from idle to active, we can adjust that process priority, and we can actually show you what this looks like. So if I RDP back to this machine, and let me make sure I got my account. And if I can type my password properly, there we go. All right, so now I've reconnected to the machine. We're going to see ControlUp is going to pick up on the state as changed to active, and now it's going to run that script again to automatically adjust the process priority. You can see the Windows Memory Manager just automatically paging in memory according to whatever application is requiring it. In this case, it's probably Explorer. And then we'll see the process priority adjust back to normal, or back to the state that it was before. So perfect. So now we've got, this user is back to being productive. We're not taking anything away from the user at this point. When they went from being an idle state or a disconnected state back to an active state, they are back to being as productive as they can be. So we think that's a pretty great feature, and we think that that's something that's really valuable today in order to make sure that your environment is working as smoothly as possible. All right, so let's just switch back to the slides real quick. Okay. So we've got some exciting new features to talk about in ControlUp. So this is going to be coming out with our 8.15 product. As of today, we've just released 8.1. 8.15 has these exciting new features. Specifically, we monitor the foreground window of the active application. We also monitor browser activity, so we can show the URL that the user is looking at. And we also have iGel integration, which we'll go into in just a second. We're very excited about this feature for people who need to monitor their endpoints and make sure that they're operating as as efficiently as good as possible. All right, so let's look at the foreground window. So what we can see within ControlUp, I'm actually just going to hop up here, just focus on my entire environment, and we'll just try to find me here. All right, here I am. So this is me. You can see I'm actually using ControlUp, and I'm using the ControlUp Management Console. It's telling you what the active application is, and obviously the active application title. So these are actually fields that we can create triggers on in order to execute some level of automation. So if you wanted to automate, if someone was running a particular program and you knew that the active application title was unique and they required a boost or something like that, like say a scanning application, we can actually do that automatically now. One of the more interesting things that we have with this particular feature as well, if I click on the active application here, we can actually specify that if certain application titles contain sensitive information or sensitive text, we can find that text and we can actually choose not to display it within the console. So for instance, in these two particular examples, we're looking for private and confidential. If there's any of this text within the title, ControlUp is going to ignore it. And so what does this look like? Let me just open like a notepad window here. And we can see ControlUp is in real time displaying the applications that we're actually using. So I went from ControlUp to the desktop to now Notepad. And so I'm going to save this as, let's save it as private salary information. And so ControlUp's going to pick up that has the word private in the title, and automatically the active application is hidden by rules. So now we know that this is a sensitive document and we're not going to display what might be within it. So this is a way that we can keep that sensitivity within your environment and keep it protected, so that way no one is able to pry as to what users might be doing. Okay, so now active URL. So this is a new feature with 8.1.5 as well. So we now support all the different browsers. If you're familiar with ControlUp in the past, we had just Internet Explorer support. So if you're not familiar with Internet Explorer, it's kind of a dead technology at this point. It's not being used anymore. It's not being actively developed, although I think Microsoft's still releasing patches for it. But the preferred browsers that most people are using today are Chrome or the new Microsoft Edge, and ControlUp automatically integrates in with these two products, with almost all browsers, I think, and we can actually pick up what the URL is. So if I go to Google here, and since I'm Canadian, it automatically picks up, hey, I'm at google.ca. So if I go to, I don't know, some other website, ControlUp will actually pick that up as well. And again, we can actually pick up on the active URL, and we can actually execute script actions or automation based on this. So, if you've got users who go to YouTube, we can actually pick up that they're on youtube.com, and you can run like a script action like, hey, maybe let's reduce the process priority here, or maybe we send them a message saying, hey, remember YouTube is only for specific company-based videos or learning videos or something like that, as opposed to just general watching, and so on and so forth. So this is a way that we can actually monitor your users and actually see what they're doing, and you can actually do some action based on the URL from that. So we think that's pretty great. This is a pretty exciting new feature with 8.1.5. 8.1.5 is not out yet. It will be out very shortly, and so that's why we're showing this here. Okay, so now we can get into iGel. So let's look at how we are integrating with iGel. So this is, a Citrix Ready webinar, and iGel is a partner of Citrix as well, and iGel and ControlUp also have a partnership, and we've been working with them to actually be able to monitor the iGel devices. And why this is important is because there's actually not a lot of tools out there that actually show you the deep down understanding of what your endpoints actually are performing like. I used to work for a large healthcare company in Canada, and one of the more interesting stories I have is that we had a project to go live with Citrix Zen Desktop, or Citrix Zen Desktop at the time, now virtual desktops, and we had purchased these endpoints a couple of years ago, and we were trying to integrate them. And Citrix, of course, it's iterating with new features almost every quarter, and one of those new features happened to be the build to lossless, which is an awesome feature. It's a great feature. And so we turned it on in our environment, and we tested it on our Windows machines, and everything was good. We tried it on our endpoints and on our thin clients, and we just experienced terrible performance. And the question is that because of the version of Citrix that was on it, or was it because the hardware was underpowered? So we didn't have that visibility. We never had that answer. We could never actually solve that. But now with ControlUp, we can actually see into the iGel devices. So what you're looking at here is our little fleet of iGel devices that we have within ControlUp. You can see we actually have some devices here that don't have the custom partition, and when you don't have the ControlUp custom partition, you get these errors, so we can just ignore them because we've enabled it for these other devices. So in this particular one, I'm going to look at this particular device here, and if I double click to drill into them, we get our list of processes. And if you recognize what the top CPU consumer of this process is, WFICA, this is actually a Citrix process. And so this is the level of information ControlUp is giving us. So it's giving us the amount of CPU that's being consumed. It's giving us the amount of memory that's being consumed by that process. And it actually shows us the exe path, which fortunately it tells us the ICA client version, so we can see 18.10.0.11. If we look at the release notes, we can know what features are actually there. So if we choose something like the build to lossless but it's not supported on the client, then we would expect perhaps to have some poor performance because the client doesn't understand that technology yet. So maybe we need to upgrade our IGL OS to get the new client that supports that kind of technology. We can also look at the disks of the IGL OS, and when you do this, you can actually see when you add the ControlUp custom partition that we have ours listed here, and it's very small. It's less than 100 megabytes to actually implement ControlUp for your IGL devices. So you can see even from the machine level metrics, we report on the IGL operating system. We tell you how much CPU is being consumed. We tell you what the network utilization of that device is. So this is a way that you can actually measure and scale out how much bandwidth you require on your Citrix servers and so on and so forth. We can see the total amount sent and received. So this user is receiving a lot of data. And one of the cooler things now with ControlUp and the IGL is that we actually have the ability to manage these devices. So again, we just don't do monitoring, and ControlUp is almost infinitely extensible through script actions. We've written a bunch of management scripts for the IGL devices. So we can right click on this guy, and if I choose recommended actions, I get a list of IGL ones that come straight out of the box from ControlUp. So we can detect that this is an IGL device through both the operating system and the name of it. If it's got ITC or IGL in the name, or if the operating system is IGL, you automatically get this pop-up happen. So what we can do with this is obviously we can shadow the devices, we can get some machine details, we can list the assigned profiles. This could be useful in troubleshooting if you're getting inconsistent experiences. We can reboot the device, update the configuration, or even send the wake-up call. So for instance, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select some of these devices, and with ControlUp, one of its more powerful features is you can actually execute this script across multiple devices. So let's list the assigned profiles for all these devices. And ControlUp is going to execute a script that reaches out to the IGL UMS server. It's going to authenticate me, and it's going to pull it down. Now, what we have on the left side here is we've got the grouping feature of the ControlUp script output automatically. So we can see in group 1, we've got these 4 devices that have these 4 profiles assigned. So it's got ControlUp integration, auto logon, and our base profile. If we look at group 2, we could see group 2, hey, we've got AD logon assigned. So that might be why group 1 doesn't work with our AD authentication, because we don't have that profile assigned. And then with group 3, okay, he's got secure shadowing, so that explains maybe he's in a more sensitive area and he requires some more security to actually be able to shadow that device. And then same thing that we have for some of these other actions. So this user, this particular machine, he's using 23% of the CPU. He's using 2.69 megabytes worth of or megabits of data per second. What is he actually doing? So with ControlUp, we can actually we can even click on this hamburger icon to show the same script. So we can actually shadow the terminal here. So if I choose to do this, it's going to again connect into the IGL UMS. It's going to pull the IP address, and then it's going to start VNC session if you have. So we can see he's consuming a lot of CPU, and he's consuming a lot of bandwidth, but all he's doing is he's sitting in a Chrome window. So we immediately know, hey, maybe we should look back at how we're publishing out Chrome on these devices, and instead of going to the Chrome welcome screen, maybe we should go to a static screen, so that way it's not consuming these resources. Because this is one of those little things that might seem like nothing, but in actuality, when you start pumping it up according to scale, it's going to start consuming more and more resources. So this is a way that we could actually troubleshoot your IGL endpoints and actually connect in and manage your IGL devices. And just one last touch here on these IGL devices. So we have our ControlUp Insights product as well. So if I right click on this guy and I say go to ControlUp Insights, we actually take all this historical information and we put it within our ControlUp Insights product. So we actually have the ability to track trends, and you can see how utilization of things are over time. So we can see the amount of CPU that this particular device uses. So this is a physical IGL endpoint. We can see, CPU is pretty low. During some days it's higher, lower, and so on and so forth. So we get all of the good statistics that you see within the ControlUp console. You can actually see it within Insights as well. So you can actually use this for historical monitoring of your IGL devices. And so just a quick touch on this feature as to how to activate it. So you have to create a custom profile, and I've got one created here, ControlUp integration. So if we look at the system, there's a firmware customization. This is the custom partition feature, and iGel has made this feature available to pretty much everybody, I think. They adjusted their licensing so that way the custom partition is now just available if you're using the latest OS or the latest UMS. So I would highly recommend you upgrade in order to activate this feature for us. So you download the ControlUp bits off of our website for the iGel integration. We've got instructions on here too. You go through here, you enable the custom partition, you specify a size, you specify the partition name. So this is case sensitive, so it needs to be ControlUp. Then you specify where to download the files after you add it to your iGel UMS. So in this particular case, you can see the URL here, and you specify your admin password and then the initializing action. So the initializing action we have in the custom partition will actually help populate some of that data. So it's important that this is all set correctly. And again, this particular one is case sensitive, so text case is important. One particular gotcha that we've seen in the field is that this needs to be an HTTP or HTTPS URL, and you need to actually test to make sure that you can access it. So if you have iGel devices that are remote, and if they can't access this URL remotely, then they're not going to get the custom partition and it won't work for them. Okay, let's switch back. All right, so we already did the user experience of the reduce, idle, and disconnect resources. So within ControlUp, again, if you have an active session and it goes idle or an idle to an active session, we can actually control and manipulate those resources for your users and making sure that they are as optimized as possible. So another automated action I want to speak to is low disk space. So within your environments, one of the most harrowing things that can happen is if you run out of disk space. If you run out of disk space, a lot of bad things happen. You can get blue screens, or just programs could start failing, or multiple different things like print jobs will just quit, or you'll just get some inconsistent performance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on our MCS Windows 10 machine here, and I'm going to look for maybe a machine that doesn't have any users. So I got this guy here, and I'm just going to change my view so that way we can actually watch this in action, because this is pretty slick. So I've got this machine, he's at 14.1 gigs. I'm actually going to fill up his disk space. So we just have a quick little ControlUp action to do that. And ControlUp is actually going to monitor this free space on the system drive, and boom, we can see that he's now down to 15 megabytes. So this is an example of like some program that's maybe saving some log data that doesn't clean up after itself, and eventually it gets to a point where it's now filled up the C drive. So this is an opportunity for this user to have a very bad day. But boom, we can see ControlUp picked up that the free space was low, and it ran an automated action to actually fix that. And so we actually offer this, again, straight out of the box. Let's go into what this looks like. We've got this trigger here. Clean up system drive with less than 600 megabytes. So this is our community action one. You just check that box. It'll download the script action, and away you go. So what does this trigger look like? So if I click edit here, we're targeting the machine record, and we're actually looking for free space on the system drive is less than or equal to 600 megabytes. And if that ends up being true, then we run this one simple action, clean Windows system drive. And so what does this script look like? Okay, so if I go here and I search for my script, clean Windows system drive. So it's by the great Ton de Vreede. I think he's will code for cheese on Twitter if you follow him. That's amazing. So this is a script action that he wrote for us. So again, power to the community. So we assign it to a machine. We do the execution target of target machine, which means it runs under the system context on the machine. And this is the script. So he's written this script where it just takes a couple parameters, whether we want to run the clean manager and whether we want to delete system restore points. So in order to set these parameters, we have this arguments tab. where you can actually edit this and change this default to true if you want it to run clean manager, or true if you want it to remove the volume shadow copies. Enabling true for both of those will cause it to take some more time because clean manager is actually a fairly intensive process. But since if you don't enable those, then it just goes and it cleans up just your regular temp folders, which is what this does to help solve those problems. And of course, you can edit the script. It's all scripts are, they're essentially the standard of open source where everything is readable, and we maintain all of this on our ControlUp script library. So this is a way that we can remediate low disk space and help use automated actions within your environment. And I hope that every one of these columns can be triggerable, with the exception of uptime. We have a separate one called uptime and days that you can use instead. And with that, if you can imagine like all the power that you have in actually to use automation to help your environment. So if you can start correlating particular values that could be bad to values that they should be, and you know how to resolve them or the steps to resolve them, you can now implement them in automation. And again, every one of these columns is able to be done so in any one of these views. All right, so now let's get into capacity management. So this is our ControlUp Insights product, and again, we're in the world that it exists today, this is another one of those views that that is becoming more and more important, is understanding, as you're onboarding users onto your platforms, what is your performance like? What is your resource utilization like? What is the experience that they're having right now? And with ControlUp Insights, we're actually able to provide that information for you. So we can look at, with our top insights, we can look at trends over how things were on a week-to-week basis. So you can see that, in our particular environment, we've got more user sessions and faster logons than our Wednesday average. So maybe something has changed. Maybe some adjustments have been done to actually make our experience better within ControlUp. And we've got all the metrics for health and hosts. And for capacity specifically, we actually have the sizing recommendations here, where the information from ControlUp is uploaded into Insights, and we can actually see the utilization. And so we can actually sort by utilization here, and we can actually see we've got some machines where it's actually saying, hey, based on your user load or based on the load on those servers, it's overspec'd. So in this particular case, I'm looking at PBS 191. It's got 4 CPUs assigned. It's telling us, hey, you could probably remove 3 and go down to 1. And it's telling us we've got 12 gigs assigned, and we could probably go down to 5. So the recommendation is remove 7. So how does it come to this logic? And if we click this little plus, ControlUp will actually show you the evidence for how it's making these decisions. So in this particular case, for the CPU utilization, we can see the utilization never exceeded 25%. So it never exceeded 1 core's worth of CPU utilization. And so that's why it's making the suggestion to go from 4 to 3, or sorry, from 4 to 1. And so again, it's telling us the 95th percentile, so 95% of the time, the usage is at 3% or so. The average usage is at 1, and we show the 95th percentile to try to knock out those, spikes, those peaks and valleys that maybe can skew something. So if you shoot up to 100% for a second, over the course of 2 seconds, that's a 50% utilization. But in reality, over the course of 10 seconds, you've got a 100% CPU spike. It's not 10%. It's actually much lower than that. And same with the RAM utilization. So again, we're looking at the 95th percentile and the average, and so we can see our memory utilization, hops between 2 and 3 gigs, but we've got 7 assigned, so we've never exceeded that over this time period. So it's recommending that we chop some memory down. And the reverse is also true if we're looking at some of these devices here. So if I'm looking at this particular machine, we can see that this user is actually using quite a bit of memory, and ControlUp is actually suggesting that we add more memory because he's running within the threshold that says, hey, we don't want him to cap out on memory. So every one of these values that ControlUp has, that builds in a bit of a buffer, especially for memory. I think it's like 15 or 20% or so. So since he's getting within that window, it's actually recommending that we increase the amount of memory on this particular box. So this is a way that we can now monitor the user experience on here to make sure that the users are actually getting the resources that they need to be productive. And so that's pretty great. And then as well, so this is, sizing recommendations, capacity management. Another point that people have within our ControlUp product, or what they've been asking us for, is there a way that they can track user activity? So, we've got a lot of work from home users now. Are they actually being productive, or are they doing something else? So ControlUp can actually track this to an extent. So I'm going to find a session here that was active, that's not active anymore. So if I look at, well, let's look at myself here. So if I'm looking at myself, ControlUp, what it does is it'll actually build a Gantt chart showing you your activity throughout the course of a day, of what you're doing within your environment. And so this is the way we can track activity, because we can actually show you when users are idle, when they're active, and so on and so forth. So for my particular case, we can see I was active through the entire time, then I go into a disconnected state, and then an active state, and then I'm back out. So maybe let's see if we can find a more interesting one here. Let me pop over. All right, I got me from yesterday or this morning. All right. Let's get a bit longer one. All right, here we go. So here's me for an hour, 23 minutes. See if I'm always productive. Okay, so now we can actually see, so this is an example of what I was talking about. So we can see our active state. So I was active from 225 down to about 345, and then I went into an idle state. So if you've got users that have long sessions, you can see that they're active, idle, active, idle, active, idle. And this is the way you can kind of track their productivity. So that way you can actually, use some evidence that they're actually being productive, at least for as much as they can be, working at home with children and stuff now around. And then as well, the Gantt chart actually shows you all the processes that you launched, all the tree and what you did throughout the course of your day. So we can see I was launching, some Chrome browser windows and Adobe Reader and Acrobat and so on and so forth. And then ControlUp will actually also track your performance. So it'll track your utilization. So I can see how much resources I was consuming versus the machine itself, and what my contribution to that overall load is. And again, this is important when you're looking at, if a machine's at 100% utilization, what was the user doing? You can actually click on these little dots here, and it'll actually spit out what process that user was doing. So top consumers was empty for that one. For this particular CPU one, no, it's all right. So we'll just move on. So we actually have the same thing with memory utilization as well. And then for IO utilization, was he consuming a lot of network bandwidth or disk bandwidth? And our protocol latency. So what kind of experience was that the user getting? So for me, I was averaging, 100 milliseconds or so, with my max being 140 and my minimum being, very good. So kind of switching between, how your users are actually seeing the screen. And then protocol bandwidth, obviously this plays important as well, because this will actually determine, if your protocol bandwidth is very low, then you can only update so much information on the screen. So it'll have to actually do that in chunks. And so this is another way that we can actually monitor how that user's experience was for that session. Okay, let's switch back. Okay, so that actually takes us to the end of our Citrix Ready webinar here, where I just want to pitch that, download ControlUp for free. It's got a 21-day trial. It's completely unlimited during that trial. So if you're moving users into the cloud, if you're onboarding and you've got absolutely nothing else, I highly recommend you download ControlUp, give it a try, because at least you have some ability to monitor your environment for those 21 days. And then it's actually free afterwards, but we just limit it to 50 sessions. So highly recommend, if you're in a bind, and even if you're against a budget wall or something like that, because you're now spending all this money to bring people on board, download ControlUp, give it a try. see what it can offer in your environment to at least help you through this time.
Okay, thanks, Trent, for walking us through these slides. And it was a pretty neat demo and showing how ControlUp works, and it complements monitoring the Citrix infrastructure as well and other devices. Great. So we have lot of questions though. I'll pick few considering the time though. So let's see the questions coming up here. Yeah. So okay, so the first question is, how does the licensing work in cloud and on-prem?
So ControlUp, it depends on the objects that we're actually monitoring. So for XenApp servers, it's a concurrent session based. For Zen desktop, it's just per user on your desktop. We actually have a licensing page on the ControlUp website that explains it. Obviously, licensing can be a complex topic, so I would probably recommend you reach out to sales@controlup.com if you want to discuss specific licensing questions. Otherwise, you can review our licensing page on our website for more specific details.
Great, thank you. So the next one is, can we pull different type of performance reports based on date range?
Yes, absolutely. I'll actually just switch back here and we can just take a quick peek at that. So within, I'm assuming they're referring to ControlUp Insights, but ControlUp Insights actually has the ability to go back 1 year. You can actually see it here in the upper right corner. So if I choose, let's choose a computer right here. So 4 hours, 24 hours, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, or you can choose a custom range.
Okay, yeah, could see that. Okay, I think the other question is something similar when it is asked, how can I manage the logs of ControlUp?
So ControlUp doesn't actually generate any logs per se. All the data that we create is actually uploaded into Insights for analysis. So you don't actually, it's a real-time console. So what you see in that point of time is how the state of your environment is. For the historical and for the logs and all that other jazz, that's actually uploaded again to our ControlUp Insights, where we do the management of that for you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next one is the integration with IGEL devices support ICG, internet devices?
So the answer there is partially yes. So how it works, if ControlUp actually connects in through SSH to the IGEL devices, and that's how we are actually pulling this information. But if you're remote, if you're going through an ICG like over a WAN or something like that, and you're connecting to your ControlUp environment, we can still manage the devices somewhat. So for instance, if I focus on here, and if I'm looking at my user sessions, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look for an IGEL device. So I'm going to look for ITC, and sure enough, here we have a user who's coming in through IGEL. We know that because of the client name. So on here, we can actually click on it, and again, you'll get the script actions that you can actually execute on the session. So for instance, let's get the assets attached to the session. If I enter that, now ControlUp is going to take the client name, and it's actually going to reach out to the IGEL UMS, and it's actually going to give us some information on this particular user. So we can actually manage remote users through the IGEL UMS through ControlUp.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the next one is, does ControlUp offer a cloud-based or on-prem monitoring solution? And is it only Citrix Cloud solution, or does it also support AWS and Microsoft WVD?
So the answer to all of that is yes. ControlUp, what we can do is we can monitor the Windows devices themselves. So when you're talking about Citrix Cloud, you've got your VDA endpoints there. So ControlUp, you can install the agent on there, and then we can actually start pulling metrics and start monitoring those devices. So the ControlUp real-time console needs to be local to connect into them. So if you're on Amazon, you're going to need to connect into your Amazon environment with ControlUp on one of your machines within your local network there, but then it can monitor all your Windows machines. there. Or if you're on WVD, if you're on the Microsoft platform, then it also works the same way. So you connect in through your Azure, you've got ControlUp there, and then you can actually monitor your resources there, just connecting into the Windows machines.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so the next one is how is ControlUp different from other EUC monitoring tools?
So this is Barry from ControlUp. I'll take that one, Trent. So there are really a few points that we highlight. The first one is ControlUp is real-time data collection, where most EUC monitoring tools are what I would classify as historical data reporting. As Trent mentioned, our agent collects data every 3 seconds. Most EUC monitoring tools collect data somewhere between every 60 seconds and every 300 seconds. So the reason we do it so rapidly in the real-time console with our agent is when you need to troubleshoot, you need to know what's happening right now. IT infrastructure metrics tend to have a lot of peaks and valleys. So just imagine if you're looking in either Task Manager or Perfmon and you only got to see data every 1 minute or every 5 minutes, 300 seconds, you would miss a lot that's going on. So that's why we're focused on real time, and I think that's a very important difference. The second one is ControlUp provides guided troubleshooting with our virtual expert, as Trent demonstrated, where most tools, while they might have some very useful reports, in most cases it's up to you to figure out what to do once you look at a report. So ControlUp guides you through and helps you put problems in context and understand what to do next. The next one is we have built-in actions at every level: the host, the VM, the session, and the process. Where most tools have very limited actions, there might be start and stop a VM, maybe kill a process. ControlUp has actions at every level. At the process level, for instance, we give you multiple ways to kill a process in case you have trouble. You can throttle a process, you can change process priority or process affinity. The next one is ControlUp has script actions, where most tools have no ability to extend themselves with either PowerShell or VB script. And ControlUp has hundreds of script actions available. We write many of them ourselves. We also have some consultants that work with us to write script actions, and we have them from the community. And Trent demoed several of those today. And then the last really big difference is automated actions. So Trent spent a lot of time showing the ability to leverage our triggering system with automation to take action. You'll find most EUC monitoring tools have no automation whatsoever, and any that do, it's very, very limited. ControlUp's is extensive automation built in, and it's very, very extensible. So those are the 5 big differences.
Thank you, Barry, for answering the question. Okay, so we'll take one more last question, and considering the time here. So the last question is it supported in a multi-tenant environment, like where there's an underlying management domain and infrastructure, and there are several segregated tenant domains or LANs?
So Trent, I'll take that one as well. We have many MSPs that work with ControlUp today, quite a few that are in the multi-thousands of users. So we have many features that MSPs take advantage of. There are some multi-tenant features that we do not have in this current version, but are coming very soon, and what we call Solve, which is our web-based version of the console, that's coming very soon. So we do have many MSPs that leverage ControlUp today in a multi-tenant environment.
Thanks, Barry. Okay, so before we end this webinar, any final words you would like to mention to our audience, Barry or Trent?
So I just reiterate, you can download a free 21-day trial from ControlUp.com. You go there on the website, it's on the top right button. Very easy to set it up and install and try ControlUp out. We do have a number of video tutorials available on our website. I appreciate all of you taking the time today. I know many of you are supporting work from home programs. ControlUp can really help you not only deliver the best user experience for those users working from home, but also remotely troubleshoot and fix those problems. Obviously, working from home today is harder to support than in the past because no one's going to bring in their laptop to IT if they have a problem. You have to do everything remotely. So ControlUp can help with that. We have a number of programs available with that. I thank Trent for doing a great job today on the demo, and I'd like to thank the team from Citrix, both Rubel and Shashi, for setting this up and supporting us, especially throughout these times today. And everyone, please stay safe and healthy.
If I had one little touch on it too, ControlUp, when you download it, You don't have to set up a sales call. You can just go to the ControlUp website and just download the program. It's a portable app. So if you know what that is, you can put it on a thumb drive and take it anywhere you want. Just double click it and install it. So it's the user experience is amazing. And just to reiterate what Barry said, yes, thank you everyone and stay safe.
Thanks, Barry, and thanks, Trent, for your time. And thanks everyone who have joined this webinar. As everyone says these days, stay home, stay safe. Okay,
Thanks,
so
guys.
with this, we'll conclude this webinar. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.